So how do you actually improve your conversions on your website? And it's probably the biggest trending topic across a lot of businesses, especially e-commerce, when they're driving a lot of traffic and they're losing a lot of it. It's probably because your website's way too complicated. So in the next few minutes, I'm going to show you why simplifying your website can actually double your conversion rates and exactly how to do it. So if you don't know who I am, my name's Josiah Roche, and I've helped my clients generate over $73 million with high converting landing pages. And so one of the biggest mistakes I see people make is that they think their website has to have a lot of bells and whistles and a lot of different things to increase the sales. But the reality is that more stuff just creates confusion for buyers and then makes them leave the website. So I'll break down these things and see how we can improve your website in three different scenarios. So number one is you're offering way too many choices. So psychology proves that when people are given too many options for something, if you're at a restaurant and you're presented with 200 menu items, you freeze up and you get what's called decision fatigue. And so this is when you basically just, you don't know what to do, and you lean into what's called paradox choice, where there's so many options and you're afraid of making the wrong choice. And so you don't make a choice at all. And so you end up not buying or not taking that next step because it's just too overwhelming for your brain to comprehend that. So there was research study from Columbia University, and they took a sample size of people and they presented 24 options. And so they want to find out, how many of these people will actually take the next step or buy the thing we're selling them. And they found that from presenting 24 different options, they only had 3% of people take that next step or buy from them. So massive, right? So then they thought, okay, what if we just cut down these choices from 24 down to 6? What would happen? They did this and they presented 6 options instead. And instead of 3% of people taking action, it jumped to a whopping 31%, right? So that's nearly 10x the amount of people, right? And this happens all the time, and there's a lot of studies around this, and I encourage you to go find them, right? But paradox of choice leads to anxiety, which means fewer conversions. Okay, so if your website's cluttered with way too many offers, way too many call to actions, way too many product options, you're just overwhelming people. So how do you prevent this? How do you fix it? So number one, limit the amount of choices that you offer. So showcase maybe a maximum of 1 to 3 different options. So if you're offering way too many services, try to cut it down to that number and prioritize your top performing ones. Number 2 is create a clear visual hierarchy. Okay, so cut down your menus, reduce the number of pop-ups you have, remove all the distractions. If you're selling a product, for example, on a page, try not to have relevant blog posts on there or whatever, anything that distracts people and gets them down a rabbit hole, especially at the menu level. Like the menu, I see a lot of people trying to offer 10 different things, 20 different things, and it's too much. So just cut down the amount of buttons, try to keep it to 1 to 2 buttons max, and just make it super, super simple for people. So you want to make sure that if you do have a main call to action, and that is to book a call, then make sure you've only got book a call buttons throughout the entire page, or buy now throughout the entire page. If you feel like you have to have a secondary button, like for example, if you're a service business, then that secondary button might be call us or contact our customer service team to answer your questions, but that's probably it. Number 3 is, I think, number 3 or 4, whatever it is. But basically, you want to use a tool like Hotjar or Microsoft Clarity. And so what these do is it tracks your visitors' behavior on your website. So it tracks what they're doing, literally their screens. So you can understand what they're doing and see how you can improve. So I've used this in the past, and I've used, for example, Microsoft Clarity. And I've gone through and watched people's recordings and found that I had broken pages that I had no idea were broken, right? Until I actually saw the user journey from their screens. For example, it would have been saved in my cache, but for their cache, since it was fresh, they downloaded my website files for the first time, and it was broken. I was like, wow, I had no idea. So I went and fixed that straight away. So investigate that. Okay, so number 2 in terms of improving your conversions is clarity beats cleverness. So a lot of businesses try to be way too clever and artistic with their marketing messaging. So studies show that people decide within the first 5 seconds whether or not they'll stay on your website. And if they can't figure out what you do right away, they just leave, right? People process simple, clear language faster than complex messaging. And so Clarity reduces the cognitive load and increases conversions. So after a big day at work, people are, they've already used a lot of their mental capacity. And so when they're scrolling on their phones, or when they're, at home in bed, they're about to turn off for the night, doing research, whatever, it depends on your target audience, they don't have a lot of cognitive load left. And so we all kind of get these, if you can think of a full tank of gas or petrol, whatever, fuel, whichever country you're in, you might start with a full tank at the beginning of the day, and then by the end of the day, you've only got a small amount left. And this is kind of your cognitive load in your brain. If you've got a website and it's got really complicated messaging, it's got really high grade reading levels, bachelor, like kind of research studies or whatever, people tend to not want to kind of spend too long on that, and because it's too much energy being processed. And so it takes up your cognitive load. So the idea is that you want to basically make the language on your website as simple as possible, so a grade 5 to 6 reading level, so that people can process it like it's silky smooth. It's like they don't have to try too hard to process the information. And that's what your goal is. Basically, you want to keep people on your website for as long as possible, so they're digesting everything really easily, so that they take that next step with you. And if you make it hard for them, they're just going to bounce. And this is what happens. So how do you fix this? And I've already hinted at it. Basically, 1, use simple language. So speak in plain English, use a 5 to 6 grade reading level, and make sure that you keep reading over it to make sure it's 100% clear. If it's not, go back, fix it up, try again. Test your headlines. So start from the top. Always start from the top, because that's where people start. That's where people see you for the first time. Test your headlines. Try different ones. There's tools like Optimizely or Unbounce. You can use those. If you've got a WordPress website, just test day in, day out, see what your conversion rate is, eyeball it. There used to be Google Optimize. I think that's out of date now, so that's no longer up and running. But the idea is that you're just testing your different headlines at the top, see what resonates with people, keep it simple. Try keep beating yourself all the time. Number 3, be upfront about what you offer. So state your value proposition very clearly and concisely. If you're an emergency plumber, people probably don't want to see your mission statement as the first thing that they see on your website. They probably want to see, like, have your pipes fixed within the next 60 minutes, or money back guaranteed, or something, like really straight to the point. They understand what they're getting. It really depends on the market you're in and how people want to perceive your value or your offer, right? You can't just be like head on straight away with every single audience type, depending on what you sell, but you get the idea. Number 4, use the Hemingway app. So there's an app called Hemingway, and it helps you rewrite your content in a way that's simple, right? So it tells you kind of like when a sentence is a bit too complicated than it needs to be, and tells you to add like more full stops, more periods and stuff like that throughout, clean up on the reading level, etc. It helps. It's a really good tool to help guide you to write simpler words, okay? So finally, number 3 in the whole improving your conversions in general is faster load times. So faster load times equals more sales. So people are really impatient, and for some things you're probably super impatient with, but I bet you other times in your life you've gone through a website and you've just scrolled the heck out of it trying to quickly scan it, right? And so if your website takes more than 3 seconds to load, and you've probably heard this before, 53% of people will abandon it. Okay, Google did a study on this. You can check this yourself as well. But every second of delay costs you conversions. And so a slow website makes people think that your business is unreliable or new or fly by night, whatever. So speed equals trust. All right, so the faster your page loads, the more likely people will stick around and convert. Okay, because it gives the opportunity for people to see your content, and then they have the choice of keep going through it. Okay, but if they can't see your content within the first 3 seconds, they just think, okay, I'll go somewhere else. I don't know why. People just do this, okay? Amazon did a study on this, internal study for themselves, and they calculated that just the 1 second delay in load time cost them $1.6 billion in sales per year. That's insane. $1.6 billion per second delayed in load time. So Amazon has kind of already done the internal study for you. If you have a slow e-commerce store, then imagine how much money that's costing you all the time if you don't fix your load time. How do you fix this? So number 1, compress your images. That's a big culprit. Images over 100 kilobytes, so a huge culprit, and they slow down your website a lot. So compress them. I use a tool called TinyPNG. Try to change them to WebP files so they load a bit faster. Number 2 is upgrade to faster hosting. Okay, so where your website files are located, if you think about your website, it's kind of like a bunch of files put together. That's all it is. And where are those files located? So if your audience are in Australia, the closest server is probably going to be Sydney. And so if I'm in, let's say, Melbourne, and I'm trying to load your website and you've got your files in Sydney, it's going to, the load time is going to be much faster than if if your files were located in Singapore, right? So if your files were located in Singapore and I'm in Melbourne, it'll take much longer than if your files were in Sydney. Okay, so that's kind of how it works. I use a tool called, I use a software provider called Cloudways for this, and I have private servers in my locations where I need them to be closest to my audience. Now, the next step up from that is what you've probably heard your developers, whatever, say is called a CDN. So there's Cloudflare as a CDN. There's heaps of CDNs out there, but basically that takes your website files in Sydney, for example, and then serves it and duplicates it to all other servers across the world to make it faster for people around the world. But you shouldn't rely on that 100%. Okay, you should make sure the core files are located where your main primary audience are. Anyway, I'm not going to get too big into this. Number 3 is minimize your code bloat. So what I mean by this is there's free tools out there. One's called GT Metrics. Another one is called Pingdom Tools. Basically run your own speed tests. Test your website dozens of times in different server locations to see how fast it loads for people viewing your website. Now, some people use Google page speed for this. I don't recommend it. It doesn't always give the most accurate data. So for example, I've had really terrible page speed load time on mobile, yet I've had dramatically fast real-time load speed. So it really it's all relative. But this will tell you if there's an unnecessary CSS, JavaScript, any code, plugins slowing your website, images, videos, fonts, all that kind of stuff. It helps a lot so you can determine what the culprits are so you can speed up your website. So I hope that was helpful. Let's recap together. So simplifying your website can actually double your conversion rates. And so we went through offering too many choices confuses visitors, but offering a clear path guides them to an action. And so you need to make sure that you're making your website silky smooth, easy to comprehend, minimal decision fatigue. So we moved on to like how, really tricky content and, making it too artistic actually works against you with conversions, and it takes more cognitive load. Okay, so you need to make sure you're reducing cognitive load to make sure that people are processing the information on your website as quick as possible so that when they're feeling super lazy, you haven't made it difficult for them. Okay, and then number 3 was faster load times. That seems to be self-explanatory. It's quite general advice out there, but still there's a lot of slow websites out there and people aren't doing this. And it makes a big difference. So if you implement just one of these things today, you'll start to see a bump in conversions. And I'm hoping this does that for you. Go take action today. Simplify your website. I hope this has inspired you to do that. I'll see you in the next episode. Cheers.